I'm a big fan of the decentralization of everything. One of my favorite chat programs is Wire, and I like it, but it's very, very much in a silo and not federated, not decentralized in any particular way, and that always kind of bugs me. And it really recently announced that they're going to be going more of towards a decentralized federated model, and that made me very happy. And I have the same sort of thoughts about social networks. Like, I'm really a big fan of Mastodon, which is making big waves lately. Very decentralized, nice and federated, and the fact they call their instead of the Twitterverse, they have the Fediverse over there on Mastodon, and I like that. That makes me happy. It makes all my inside parts all warm and squishy. And so today, we're talking with the co-founder of Blockstack, which is basically decentralized internet. So there's a lot to talk about in that, and a lot of questions to talk about in that. But before I'm allowed to talk about that, I have to talk about super awesome Linux-powered hardware. Specifically, and I know I've talked about the Meerkat from System 76 a couple of times recently. Then I wake up this morning and I think, what sort of hardware do I want to look at today? They released a friggin' new Meerkat today. So they have one that's smaller than before. So this is a little 4-inch by 4-inch cube, but it's a little bit thinner than it used to be. Apparently they have two sizes now. A really thin little guy, which is adorable. And then the one that's just a little tiny bit thicker, just enough to fit a 2.5-inch drive in there. But if you don't want that one, you can just have a little M.2 and have a little thinner profile. So the base configuration for that bad mamma jamma, 4-inch by 4-inch cube, very nice and small, 2.4 gigahertz i3. It goes up to a 4 gigahertz i7, latest gen and all that good stuff. 4 gigs of RAM, goes up to 32. The low end hard drive on this is a 32 gig M.2 SSD, which is just friggin' delightful for a little tiny little guy. Of course, you can crank that up to like 2.5 terabytes or so. That configuration is $499. What I like about this rig is that if I do pump it up to an i7 and get a whole bunch of RAM in there and shove in a nice faster drive, if you look at the ports on this, if you're watching the video version, it's got four ports, 4 USB ports, which means I can do all my video production on it. And I really like the idea of having my video rig be a little tiny 4-inch by 4-inch cube. Practical? I'm not sure. Maybe it makes more sense to have a big rig, but I kind of like the idea. Over at PogoLinux.com, we're looking at a different rig than we normally look at with them. I've never paid attention to their VR models, but they have what they call the Velocity D58SQ VR edition. It's basically a mega tower that they custom spec out, design, and test for use in development of VR software. And they test it with the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift because why wouldn't you? So it's a really quiet tower. They whisper quiet. I spec'd it out with two Xeon 6-core 1.7 gigahertz processors. It goes up to a 22-core Xeon because why wouldn't you want 22 Xeon cores? I put it in 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It goes up to half a terabyte. Again, why wouldn't you want that? I put in a 4 terabyte hard drive. It does have 7 drive bays though, because again, why wouldn't you want to have 7 drive bays and a GTX 1078 gigs? But you can put in quad Titan X cards. So you can put 4 SLI GTX Titan X cards, which would be insane. And I think someone should do that. But the configuration I just went with the 1070 card, and that configuration is $3,747, and it's super, super fancy and super pretty. Now, before I ramble on too much further, let's bring on the co-founder of Blockstack. Say hello to the world, my friend.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, man. All right. Quick elevator pitch. We get onto an elevator, and you have to describe what a decentralized internet is and Blockstack's role in that before we get to the 3rd floor. Go.
Absolutely. So Blockstack is building a decentralized internet, and we're allowing you to own your data and to have the apps run locally without requiring any remote servers or third parties. So when we use the internet today, we rely on so many third parties. We rely on Facebook, we rely on Google, we rely on CDNs, we rely on the domain name system, we rely on VeriSign and ICANN, we rely on all the certificate authorities, we rely on so many intermediaries that we have a lot of things where they could go wrong, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of breakage points there.
A lot of breakage points, a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of parties that we rely upon, a lot of room for error, a lot of DDoS attacks that could occur,
Sure.
data silo breaches,
Sure.
right? A lot of tracking that can happen around the internet, persistent tracking across websites.
Right.
There are so many different problems, invasive advertising. All of these things are coming up as a result of the fact that we are not liberated on the internet, and we are not living in our own homes, so to speak, in the digital world.
Right.
Instead, we are living in this fiefdom where we are the serfs and we are subject to the lords of Facebook and Google, etc. So,
Okay.
yeah, of course,
I'm with
right.
you on that. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we want to actually have a safe and free experience on the internet, and frankly, the internet is enveloping our entire lives. So if we want a free and safe experience in our entire lives, then we need to allow ourselves to be self-sufficient, to be self-sustainable, right? That is what Blockstack is all about. Blockstack is about being your own individual. Blockstack is in a sense asking the question, hey, what happens if there is a particular certificate authority that decides to say that this particular website is Google, which actually happened in Turkey.
Right.
Right, that happened where a particular certificate authority attested incorrectly about what Google was, right? What happens if the East Coast grid goes offline, right? All of a sudden you don't have access to any of your software.
Right. It's all gone.
Now this is an extreme example, of course.
Well, it's an extreme example, but it's examples that are real world and practical. And there can be political unrest, there can be simple power outages, there can be natural disasters, there can be all sorts of things that would cause these sorts of issues and have caused these issues. So, okay, so how does Blockstack get around that? Like how specifically does that work?
Okay, so you download Blockstack, and we give you a browser portal. It upgrades your existing browsers. You can use Chrome, you can use Firefox, Safari, whatever you want to use. Okay. And then all of a sudden, Blockstack will upgrade your browser, and it'll give you access to this new decentralized
When you say
internet.
Upgrade my browser, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean like a series of plugins, or are you talking about utilizing like a proxy service running locally?
What it actually does is it runs a service on localhost, and you can see a dashboard which has all your apps.
Oh,
and that dashboard, it's a proxy server running locally. There's actually two servers. One is the single page app, which is the dashboard, and then you can see your applications, and it's an app launcher too. And then you can log into your apps right there. You manage your identity and you manage your storage. And then there's a server that's running in the background that provides for the DNS services.
Interesting.
And so you actually have your own DNS resolver locally.
On your local machine.
Yes.
Okay. And
the DNS system uses the blockchain in order to synchronize the state between all the nodes in the network. So you're able to have a DNS system, right, where you don't have to rely upon DNSSEC, you don't have to rely upon certificate authorities, you don't have to rely upon you have certificate pinning automatically. You have the equivalent of certificate transparency. You have a DNS system that is secure by default, right? You have that. You have identities that you control. You have your own private keys, and then you create and manage your identities locally. And then you also have your storage. So you log into Dropbox, Google Drive, Amazon Cloud Drive, or you can use BitTorrent, or you can use your own Linux server, right, that you want to connect to. You can configure your own storage drivers however you want. It doesn't matter. It just uses them as dumb drives, right? And you can have multiple, and all of your data is encrypted and synced up to the cloud. And then the applications get access to it and get the ability to decrypt that data when they pull it back down. So what it's doing is it's actually commoditizing all of these data storage providers, which means you don't have any lock-in with any of them. And even the data storage providers, Dropbox can't read your data in this case if you connect Dropbox. So it's really freeing you up, and it's allowing you to actually control your data and your storage, even though you're utilizing a cloud.
Okay, so and to be clear, so let me see if I kind of understand the data storage part of this. So if I've got it set up on my local computer, I configure it. Let's say Dropbox. Let's say I've been utilizing Dropbox a ton and I want to utilize Dropbox as a data store, right? So I have this, I connect this up to it, I connect blockchain up to that. When I'm adding in my data, whatever those files are, whatever that data is, that's going into the blockchain, but then those
sorry.
So how is that working?
The blockchain is only used for a secure mapping between names and public keys and zone file hashes. It's only used for the domain name system, the domain name component. Okay, so Blockstack provides, I'll lay this out more clearly. Blockstack provides DNS, it provides identity and authentication, it provides storage, it provides encryption, it provides payments through Bitcoin, right? All of these things. In order to build a fully decentralized application, you need all of the components to be decentralized. Right. Otherwise, there's a point of control, right? I
get that.
So, right. So the way we thought about this was, how can you build completely decentralized application, an application that the developer can just sign and send out there, and the developer does not have to have any servers or databases. And then the user can just download the application, which is only client-side, and then the app will now use the user's data storage API to do puts and gets.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, imagine each user had their own Firebase.
Yep.
Right? And layer that on with a domain name system and a payment system and encryption automatically and signing and all that other shit.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of stuff.
There is.
And a domain name system that doesn't require any central authority, like doesn't require ICANN, doesn't require VeriSign which VeriSign runs .com and .net and .org and .gov and
right, all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. So like we don't need VeriSign anymore. We don't need ICANN anymore. Right. We have a domain name system that just runs because the domain name operations, the registrations, the transfers, the zone file updates are happening on the blockchain. All of that's happening on the blockchain. All of the nodes are getting this information.
Okay.
Only the name to public key to zone file hashes are encoded and processed on the blockchain.
Okay.
The actual zone files themselves, and to be clear for those who are not aware, the zone file is the file format that the domain name system uses to have the mappings between the domains and the subdomains and the IP addresses or URIs or whatever, right? So those zone files are actually replicated on an unstructured peer-to-peer network that all of the full Blockstack nodes they're members of that network, and so they just gossip to each other and make sure that they have 100% replica of all the files, right?
Yeah.
So you have that domain name, you have that top level discovery layer for domain name to public key to zone file hashes. Then you have the peer-to-peer network, which replicates the zone files themselves. And then the zone files contain URIs, which point to additional, where your data, it points to, for example, your profile file. So if I want to look you up, I can just go to your username, and then I can go do a lookup from your username to the zone file itself. Inside the zone file has a URL that allows me to load your profile.
I gotcha. Okay.
Right. And then also you can also delegate to additional keys. So you can have signing and encryption keys that you delegate to inside of your zone file. So it's actually that's really the backbone of the entire system. Then you have identity, then you have storage and everything beyond that. But really what this is a full stack application platform. So you can build these fully decentralized applications that the users just download and run. And they're, if you build your application in a certain way, if you build it in the right way on Blockstack, the user could turn off the internet and the application would still work on their local network,
right,
with their colleagues in their office, right? Imagine we think about, if all of a sudden we don't have access to the internet, we can't use Slack. We can't even chat with our coworkers in our own office. That's absurd.
That's a really
right?
good example. Yeah.
So that's crazy to me, crazy town. So how do we actually get to so I mean, we have been in the situation in the past year when Slack has gone down for something like 4 hours. we've been in a situation where GitHub has gone down for hours,
Yeah.
and we haven't even been able to work. That's absurd. We've been in a situation where there was a massive DDoS attack, and so many different services, including Twitter, all of a sudden were down and we couldn't access them. You know, that's a problem. So we have all of these external dependencies. We are moving all of the power to the edges. We're moving to empower the end user, and we're allowing the developer to build applications that can power the end user. And we're providing all those tools that let you do that.
I'm with you. Do you see okay. Do you see a ability to scale this to the point where this just is, I hate to say this just is the internet, but you know what I mean? That this is what people are using. Can it scale that large? Because I mean, inherently, so many blockchain style things do suffer a bit from scalability issues. How far can this scale?
So I would say that this can scale indefinitely, really, because it just matters how you manage the name right. Well, the only component that uses it's how you manage the name records.
I'm with
right?
you. Yeah.
The only component that is on the blockchain, remember, is the domain name system. So everything else, we can just push that aside for a second. It's obvious that everything else scales, right?
Right.
The storage system, because it's bring your own storage.
Right.
The identity system.
If the storage can't scale, then it can't scale now. So it's the same.
Exactly.
It's the same
You're
thing.
using the same. Yes.
Right.
You're just riding on existing storage providers. You're riding on the cloud.
Gotcha.
You're just connecting your own storage providers. Okay. So and then the identity system is just you control your own keys. You sign your own files and you publish files. You have your own profile format. You have your own proofs of who you are, etc. That scales, obviously, right?
Right.
The component we need to talk about is the domain name system. The domain name system uses the blockchain, and this is a big problem because the blockchain is just an endless log, right?
Yeah.
Blockchain keeps increasing in size. I don't know what the Bitcoin blockchain is right now, but it's something like between 100 gigs, probably 80 gigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about 80 gigs right now, and it's just growing and growing. And so all of the Blockstack nodes, what they actually have to do is they process the full Bitcoin blockchain. And Blockstack, by the way, I'll clarify, is a blockchain agnostic system. So it works with any blockchain. It can work with Bitcoin. It can work with Zcash. It can work with Ethereum. It's completely blockchain. It can work with private blockchains. So
that's interesting.
But so we built it in a way because it was very important for us to have that layer separation, right? So that we can actually make sure that we're not coupled. We don't have any tight couplings.
Yeah, you can jump between blockchains if a better scaling, more performant one comes along.
Exactly,
yeah.
And we actually have migrated from the Namecoin blockchain to the Bitcoin blockchain to get the full security of the most secure blockchain in the world by far, which is Bitcoin. By far, right?
Interesting.
So we actually did a migration. We've proved that it's possible. We did it without a hitch. So as far as I know, we're the only team that's actually done that. The only system that's migrated between blockchains.
That's very cool.
So we have this problem. The problem that we have is that this is a long ledger. You have to process all this data, right? Well, the Blockstack nodes, they process all of this. It turns out that you could, at the current level, you can actually process a decent number of domain names, right? So the number of transactions per year on Bitcoin is approximately 100 million, right? If you were to saturate the whole network, you could conceivably do 100 million transactions per year, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard, but
you could.
This is like an upper limit. Let's say you just want to do 5%. Okay, 5 million. You want to do 5 million transactions per year. Let's say every record requires about 4 or 5 transactions.
Okay.
That means that we can register about 1 million new domains per year. Okay. Now, we also have subdomains, right? And the subdomains can be included inside of the zone files, right? We also have a proposal that we're going to implement, which is cryptographic commitment of subdomains.
I have no idea what that means, but I like the way it sounds.
I know, it sounds pretty cool, right?
It does sound pretty cool.
I think it's badass because what you can actually do is you can take a particular zone file in history, and you can let's say you delegate 10,000 subdomains
Okay.
to public key, right? The protocol can say those can never be undelegated. So let's clarify what that means, right?
Yeah,
So
what does that mean?
you have a Gmail account, right? Gmail can, you essentially you have a sub property of gmail.com when you have a
Okay,
Gmail
I get
address.
that. Sure.
Right, right. Gmail can at any time take that back from you, right? Or here's another example. Let's say you have this is more clear. Tumblr.com, right? If you've ever used Tumblr, Tumblr will give you a subdomain .tumblr.com,
Okay.
right? If Tumblr decided that you pissed it off, or if some government went to Tumblr and said, "Hey, you really got to shut down this account," they could, right? Or if you had a fight with the CEO,
Are you
Tumblr could revoke your subdomain and take away your property,
are you
right?
talking about a situation where you could have a subdomain of another existing domain where you are yourself the owner of that subdomain, not the owner of the domain itself?
Exactly. Yes, that's a better way to articulate it.
So
Very, very well said.
so literally if I gave you a blockstack.lunduke.com subdomain in your system,
Yes.
you
Yes.
would then own that,
Yes.
and
And you could never take it
I
away
could never
from me.
take it back. That is
Yes.
that is a very different way of approaching it. My mind's all a flutter here. That is very funky.
Yeah.
I think I like that a lot.
Yeah,
It's just so
because
fundamentally different.
right?
So once you create a subdomain, it's out there.
Exactly.
It exists. For
Yes.
period,
Well, here's
it exists.
another way to think about it, right? If you get google.co.uk, right? People just assume that, that like that's not going to go away,
Right.
right? I mean, we already kind of assume that for .coms.
But right.
I mean, we take all this stuff for granted. That's mostly because in practice, you're not going to get this revoked from you. So most of the time, people don't have a problem. But there are
technically
still, yes, exactly. Technically, your .com could be removed from you at any time.
interesting.
So with this system, your domains can't be removed from you, and your subdomains can't be removed from you. So we can allow people to buy property on the system, and then sell sub properties that are actually theirs.
It's just theirs.
Yes, it's complete sovereignty. So
Fascinating.
the first time you have name sovereignty, and in a world of URLs and links that we pass around, names are the property of the internet. You can change, because names refer to people, they refer to businesses, they refer to content,
Right.
right? You can change almost anything, but if you have a broken link, you have a lot of problems, right?
Right. Okay. My mind is a swimming. Let's start from this angle. I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I assume that the strategy for monetization and sustainability from the financial standpoint is kind of similar to the current name registrars for blockchain, where you basically, blockchain.com kind of acts as the paid name registrar for the system, I would assume. Something like that?
Yeah, so in order to get a name on the system, you have to pay.
Sure.
And there's a few reasons for that. One big reason is anti-name squatting, right? If all names were free,
and then you just come in and grab them all. They're yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we do today is, if you want to register a name, you have to perform a ritual where you destroy some Bitcoin.
Interesting. So walk me through this.
Okay. So, and I'll explain why we did that. Here's how you do it. There's a namespace, for example. There's the .id namespace on Blockstack. Okay. Primarily for username registrations for people. If the really short names. Oh, and by the way, let me clarify something. Anyone can create a namespace, and anyone can set the pricing rules of that namespace. Anyone can set the name expiration rules, whatever, all kinds of rules that you can create a namespace and it's yours, and you can customize.
Okay.
Okay. So there's the .id namespace. You have usernames, and we have these interesting rules that you can set. So the really short names, 1 and 2 character names, are really expensive, and like something they could be like up to 400 bitcoins per name. Like I think it's 400 bitcoins for a 1-letter name.
Sure.
Like a.id, and then it's like 0.00000 something bitcoins for like a 15 character name or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a very simple price curve. But the point is that you can, if you want, let's say you want a 2-character name, really short, and you have to destroy a bunch of bitcoins.
Sure. Yeah. You gotta take out those bitcoins.
You just take them and you send them to null, and then there's a transaction that's on the network that all the nodes will recognize. And you're saying, I'm sending these bitcoins to 00000, and in exchange for that, I want the network to grant me 1 name registration.
Now wait, so literally you take bitcoins and destroy them.
Yeah.
So you're not getting paid for that.
No.
You're just destroying bitcoins.
Yeah.
In order to register.
Yeah.
A name.
So we could have made them go to us.
Yeah.
But what we wanted to do was we wanted to bootstrap and establish the network.
Well, you didn't
as
want
a neutral
money.
Playing field.
You're like, no money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I get it, man. I get it, man.
We can do one in the future where we get paid, right?
Sometimes I go out in the world and I'm like, nobody give me money. I'm going to break out in hives. I get all rashy. It's weird. No, I'm with you on that. So, okay.
You get me.
Okay.
You get me.
I see where you guys are coming from. Yeah. So we
don't want any. We want everyone to feel like they're welcome, and that like this is a decentralized network, to be clear, right?
Right.
We are just one provider, one developer of this network. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I totally see where you're coming from. So in order to get the names, you're right. It's more like it's a ritual. You're making an investment. You're saying this is worth enough to me that I'm putting some sort of either computational power or monetary investment behind it. But it's not necessarily going to anyone. It's just me making a ritual sacrifice to the gods of the decentralized internet, who will then grant me the spiritual power to have a new namespace or whatnot.
Yeah, now you sound a little crazy, but
it kind of does sound a little crazy, but I kind of like it. It's a good kind of crazy, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, in the future, we can create a namespace where we get paid, and anyone can create a namespace. Like you can create a namespace and be like, .Lunduke, and
you gotta pay me in order to create a subdomain on that namespace.
Exactly.
In order to create I'm a happy guy .fart. I have the .fart. Namespace. Okay. So
exactly.
And then people have to pay me to be on the fart. Then that's my gotcha.
Any .fart.
Any .fart. So then I basically become like the ICANN except for of .fart in that mechanism. Except I can never revoke anyone's own names and namespaces on .fart. Once I've created .fart, I can get paid for .fart, but I can never get rid of .farts.
Exactly.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So it's like limited power.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like you can have a certain amount of power. It's like you can accept taxes for the new land that you have discovered, but you can never undiscover that land. And once people have paid you the taxes, whatever piece of property they paid taxes on is now theirs, and I have no control over it.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Now this is starting to jive with me a little bit more. Okay. So. As of right now, so if I were to hop onto it right now and look through it and start using some of the applications, and the applications are running locally on my machine, what's possible to do on it right now? Like when you look out across the available applications and whatnot, are there a set of particular types of functionality and apps that are currently available to you?
Yeah, so we have we have applications that are using individual components of Blockstack. So, for example, we have OpenBazaar, which is this decentralized eBay,
Okay.
and they're using our domain name system for all the stores.
Decentralized eBay.
Yeah.
That I gotta be honest, that sounds like friggin' wild, wild west, crazy town. I'm not saying that in the bad way. I'm a pretty big fan of Wild Wild West, Crazy Town, but
there's a lot of interesting goods being sold on there. Yeah.
Okay. So let's actually focus on that for a minute, because I feel like I want to make sure this is 100% clear to both me and everyone else listening.
Sure.
All right. So we have Wild Crazy Town, Wild West eBay, right? Mm-hmm. Totally decentralized. Yeah. So if I load up Blockstack on my personal machine, I load up Firefox, connects to it through Blockstack, and connects to Wild West eBay. Let's just talk about it in those terms. That way we're not specifically talking about the actual implementation, because I don't want to badmouth or promote until I figure it out. But so when it starts connecting to it, because it's decentralized, how does and someone posts something for sale to it, where is that data stored? Like, is it just more traditional in that respect, in that there is just a server somewhere with all the data for that application? Is it really up to the application to be a little bit more like a silo or more decentralized? How does all that work? Where is that data stored?
Okay, so I'm going to give a more somewhat nuanced answer to this.
All right, give me nuances, man.
So
I'm sitting cross-legged right now. I'm fascinated by this. You guys, I'm like jumping up into my seats. I kind of want to sit on my knees. Okay.
I love it.
All right, tell me. Explain this.
Okay. So what we're really pushing for, the first thing is there's a certain app model that we're really pushing for, and we're working to. We came out with individual components for our platform, right? Yep. The DNS component, identity, storage, right, etc. Applications are using individual components of these, right?
Sure.
We just started releasing our fully integrated developer platform, right? It's like doing a slow release of that so that developers can actually build on all of the components in like a fully decentralized way.
Makes sense.
So that's still getting rolled out, and then these applications are going to be published on our app store, which is not out yet, where people can actually go and get these apps. Okay. So the app model that we're pushing going forward is one where it's a application. It's either a single page application that's running in your browser, or it could be a desktop application that you download.
Sure.
Right. But this application is completely client side, and the data uses your personal storage API.
Sure.
It uses your personal storage API to store your data.
Okay.
Okay. And then my instance uses my personal storage API to store my data. Okay.
Okay.
And remember, we have this data synced up to the cloud, but encrypted. And if we friend each other, then we can get the ability to encrypt each other's data.
Oh, so in a hypothetical model. So okay, go ahead.
Yes,
explain more.
This is going forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but then I can explain how OpenBazaar actually works. Sure. Which hasn't it's OpenBazaar's only, or this decentralized eBay, this particular example.
Yeah. Wild West eBay.
Wild West eBay, exactly. Wild West
I want to
eBay.
shop there really bad.
Yeah. So in this example, Wild West eBay, it only uses us for DNS, but it actually has its own peer-to-peer network of nodes that connect to one another.
Okay.
Yeah. In the model that we're pushing for, we don't want to require developers to have to like build their own and maintain their own peer-to-peer network, right? So and there's no reason that is required. So in an alternate Wild Wild West eBay, you could just have your client that you start up.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is you need to go through an index of stores, right? And in order to do that, you just need discovery nodes to connect to. That could be it could be a hard-coded list of IP addresses. It could be It could be anything, right? Or it could be transactions in the blockchain. You need some initial discovery. Yeah, exactly. Then you build up your full list of stores to crawl through, and then you actually go through and discover them, and then you can list out all the stores on your home screen.
So then,
Okay.
in theory,
Now,
if you're grabbing, let's say, if I put something up for sale, like I'm selling a toaster, I have a wicked nice toaster that I bought in 1987, and I'm selling that sucker on Wild Wild West eBay.
yeah.
I post pictures of it, and those pictures and that text data and all of that gets stored to my storage API. So,
Yes.
let's say a Nextcloud instance or something like that I have set up. All that data goes there, and then anyone who comes through and wants to view my item entry, my for sale advertisement, they're actually going to be fetching the picture, the text, and whatnot from whatever my storage is. So from from my Nextcloud instance or something like that.
That's exactly how it works. Yeah.
That's
and it could be in this case in this case, because it's open browsing, you wouldn't encrypt the data. It would just be
It'd just be open, and then if people want to get it from Wild Wild West eBay, they connect to my Nextcloud instance with transparently, because then they just get an index somewhere, and somewhere in that index it says, you know, you're checking out stuff for sale from you know, Lunduke.id or whatever, and that points to my data store, which is formatted in such a way that that particular application, that's an eBay application, knows to look for those entries.
Yes,
that sort of thing.
Exactly. And the next thing you need is search. So you unfortunately will
you will do that.
You will have to delegate to a particular search provider.
So there's got to be a provider then that goes through and just constantly indexes all of these things, looks for all of them, and then stores a big SQL database of all this stuff.
The key thing there is minimal. How do you do it in a way where there's minimal trust in that search engine?
I gotcha.
And the other key thing is making it so that you can switch easily within the application.
But the data itself, the namespaces, all of that is just all totally decentralized.
Exactly.
So then there
conceivably
is
you could run your own search if the data isn't too, like if the index isn't too large, you could run your own one locally.
But someone could come along and be the next Google of this sort of decentralized internet. But there's nothing about that service that would make it something that you couldn't just leave and abandon for someone else's own search engine or something along those lines.
Exactly.
Because it wouldn't be controlling anything; it would just be indexing.
Yes.
Like a search engine was meant to be in the first place. Basically, this would be a return to the Lycos days in that regard, and I wouldn't mind that. Interesting. All right. So okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So. Let's talk security within this sort of decentralized network. So I'm connected with Firefox. First questions, are there any issues with, you know, having those connections be secured? Like, how secured can those connections all over the place be? Is everything over HTTPS, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what's the security look like for the communications?
So you could have, for example, a encrypted peer-to-peer chat, and in that case, we would encrypt the communication with each other's public keys. Right. Right.
I guess you're right. That's really up to the individual application to implement on its own.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not part of the network. It's part of network's not even the right word.
And the communication happens between the users. There's no client server model here.
Right. It's all peer to peer. Everything is one person to one person, end to end. So we just want to make sure any applications that are written are just properly end to end encrypted. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the only like thing you could say client server is like between your local client and your local server. So. Right, there's
but that fascinating. Okay. Yeah. Okay, interesting. This is really helpful to me, man, because honestly, this is helping me understand it far more than I was grasping it up until we talked today.
It gets really deep, right?
This does get really deep. So where do you go? How do you fund yourself going forward then? Are you going to go the model of, you know, paid app store type things, you know, you're actually collecting money for the DNS registrar? Are you going to register .fart and make sure everyone has to pay a lot of money to get the domains on that name, on that? What are you going to do? How are you going to pay the bills with this?
So in the short term, we're just focused on growing the community.
Sure.
Not as much focused on monetization. But
that's in the back of your head, man. You're thinking about it.
Yes, totally. I mean, as time goes on, it becomes more and more important, and we have multiple models that we could run with. So we could do, like you said, we could create
What do you want to
new
run with?
namespaces.
What feels right to you? I mean, and I know this isn't
Yeah,
locking you into anything, and
sure, sure.
this is not an announcement at all. But I
Yeah,
legitimately, because I'm trying to think it through in my head, I'm not sure what even makes sense.
yeah, you're
'Cause
right. I
I
mean,
don't know.
one thing I think about is there the we're building this new internet, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We're,
yeah, yeah.
we're,
I'm
we're
with you.
building this new internet, and on this new internet, there's going to be um, there should be new business models for this new internet, right?
There can be.
There sh there
I'm not
should be.
opposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, here's a good example. We had before the internet, we had music. After the internet, maybe business models need to be rethought a little bit,
Right. So
right?
yeah, I get that. Businesses change when the technology changes.
Yes.
I get behind that.
So some of these new, there will be new business models that emerge. I think one of them is the namespace business model. And one thing we actually envision, by the way, is applications making their own namespaces. So you can have Wild West eBay namespace. And you can have aggregator nodes that are the initial discovery points of stores.
Right.
And you require a name registration in order to be on that root index
Right.
for the application. And the application, all of this, the application creator could then get some can get some name registrations, right? Name registration fees for this. Another thing I think about a lot is how do we so one question is like, how do we monetize, right?
Yeah.
There's also questions of how do we help developers monetize? And
I gotta be honest, I've already come up with about a million ideas of a way I can monetize this. I want to know how
oh yeah,
you can monetize this. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
straight up, basically, we're talking about a whole lot of opportunities for me. How do
Yeah,
you guys continue to fund development and maintenance of this? That's what I'm more
yeah.
curious about.
So here are other models. I can run through all the models that we're thinking of,
What
and
do
then I
you
can.
think it should be?
I mean,
You're playing.
that's
You're being diplomatic, and if you feel like you can't say it right now, it's okay.
look.
Just say
The
it straight
obvious
up
one
to
is
me.
paid software, right? So we can have freemium software. We can have a free version, completely open source.
Wait, that's the obvious one? I hadn't even gone there. But
Yeah.
continue.
All right. I mean, and then we could. I think that's the obvious one to me. And then and then we could have a premium version that people can pay for that has additional features.
What would be in a
May-
freemium?
Maybe we give people, maybe we make it so that people don't have to connect to storage provider. We just automatically have one
Oh,
for
like
them
a
or something.
pre-included storage provider, basically.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe there's a bunch of things that we do
The blockchain version of
that
Google
heavily
Drive
reduce.
bundled in.
Yeah, I don't know. So we can make it so that the like extremely mainstream user has it's much easier for them to enter,
Sure.
right? I don't know.
Okay, I see what
Another
you're saying.
another one would be a premium version for businesses, for corporations, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Another one could be
No one off to your side is going to help you, man.
yeah.
No, okay. All right. You know what?
Yeah, I mean, like this is something that we haven't we
Yeah,
haven't
yes,
focused on.
you're still working on
Right.
that. You're just
Yeah,
getting this up and going. All right. So
exactly.
between here and there, between point A and point B, and point B is profit.
Yeah.
Obviously the big hurdle to get over is not just, making sure you're happy with all the technical implementations of it,
Yeah.
but getting a lot of people using it and getting a significant and
Yes.
interesting number of applications that are relying upon it. So how do you get that? What sort of a interest in adoption have you seen thus far? And as a second part to that is, how do you get it to the point where there's enough people using it? Because I mean,
Yeah.
I dig Mastodon, right? Mastodon's a cool social network.
Mhm.
It's based on all the GNU stuff. Dig it, lovable, federated, all the buzzwords I love the most in life. However, it's even though it's growing really fast right now, the predominant question is will it grow enough to have sustainability long term, right? That's what everyone in these sorts of systems is looking at that. And so we know it's possible because we saw with Bitcoin that it does eventually hit a critical mass and it can keep going. But how do you get there? And how long do you think it'll take? And all the other questions I'm about to ask you.
Sure. Real quick thing. I mean, there's federated models. We aren't that psyched about federation.
I see what you're saying, but
because it ends up getting conglomerated, and you just look at the Mastodon instances. There's one that's enormous, and they had to cut off.
They had to cut it off. They hit 47,000 users, and they had to cut it because they're improving that as they go. But that is an issue. But if you're fully decentralized, like what you guys are proposing, that sort of bottleneck just simply goes away, assuming that you're developing things correctly.
You should be your own host.
Yes, and I don't disagree with that at all.
And it should be super easy for you to do that. And that's what we're trying. We're the existing decentralized social networks and decentralized systems are tethered to this federated model, and we're working to liberate people so that they don't have to have that. You can just completely rethink this. But to answer your previous question about how we get there, it's a few things. And one is that we need to make it as easy as possible. We need to reduce I think there's this massive user experience gap between the software that a lot of people use and the open source software, decentralized software, right? There's a lot of reasons for that, but we need to close that gap, right?
Okay.
The second thing is that we need to bring users to the platform and make it so that all of the developers that build on top of our platform can get users like this, and reduce the friction and allow people to easily switch, right? So we have 70,000 users who are already using Blockstack. Key is to take that to the next level, keep plowing more users so that we can help serve developers. And a very important part of our system is that because users control their data, when the user clicks to log into an application, their data is with them. So the friction, there's an identity system built in, authentication system built in, you bring your own data. There isn't onboarding. There isn't now you need to build up your graph and you need to invite your friends and all this other stuff. Well, you need to bring your content. You need to export your notes from Evernote, and you need to. No, that doesn't happen. You click login, and the app is immediately useful, right? You can migrate from Notes app to Notes app. You can migrate from social network to social network. Everything just moves with you. Okay. So that's the key. So one is reduce the friction and reduce the UX gap. Two is we bring users to the developers, right? And reduce the friction for them to sign up and bring their data with them. And then three is helping developers get paid, right? And really facilitating that and making it so that you can actually monetize open source.
Always a good thing. I do like money.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, developers will absolutely come to a platform if it will help get them paid.
Right. I mean, most nerdy developers I know, if fully open source and money, I'm in. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I love talking about these business models, the business models for developers that build on top of this, because there are new business models that are getting unlocked here.
This is interesting. What is the current? I mean, it's early days. We're early days, but how many, people are using it? How many nodes? That sort of thing.
Frozen.
Come on back, internet. Let the delightfully scruffy bearded man through. Internet. Of course, the internet's messing around with me right now. Of course it is. Oh, hey, there we are. There we are.
Angry at you.
There we go. Angry. Come on back through. You're looking good now.
Me.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Early days.
Yeah.
Clearly, I mean, I'm not expecting numbers to be huge at this point. How many people you got using this right now?
So we have 70,000 users,
What?
and yeah.
You do? I was expecting you to come back with like 12. I mean, I was, you know what I mean? I mean, this is early days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So we have different versions of our software that we've been releasing.
yeah.
The fully, completely on your computer version, we have yet to release.
Okay.
Right? We have a hosted version that users are using today.
Okay. Okay. So like hosted by you, and then completely on our computer. Is there like a timeline for that, or is it more of a when it's done sort of thing? When can we expect to be able to self-host it all?
You can download the developer alpha from GitHub right now.
Yeah.
But the actual release will be coming out this summer.
Okay,
so
that's not
it's a Mac OS. It'll be Mac OS first. So you just download a Mac OS app.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I'm sorry.
What?
You can build from Linux today.
Mac
Are you
OS.
Linux?
Of course I'm Linux.
All
I'm
right.
a nerd, man. Nerds use Linux. What are you running right now? What kind of crazy operating system you got rocking over there? Probably Mac OS. You're running a Mac.
Mac OS.
You're running a Mac.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can tell because clearly you groom your facial hair, but you don't groom it like all the way, you know? You've got that I go to WWDC look. I see. That's all right. I used to go to WWDCs too. I forgive.
Why no more?
Why not anymore? I'm a freedom loving nerd, man. I sit over here on the Linux.
I am too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm you know, I used to be a big Mac guy, but I used to run Mac software companies and everything else, and then I got burned by Apple a few too many times. And so what I did is I searched around in my pockets and I found an amazing middle finger to give them, and then I went and joined the Linux world, and then they gave me a high five, and we've been having fun ever since. It's been fantastic. Okay, all right, this is fascinating. This is really, truly fascinating. I clearly want to try this out. Could you hit me up? Hit me up when you guys are doing your release this summer. Yeah, sure. I want to kick the tires on this. Get a Linux version out, sucker.
We will.
All right.
We're prioritizing that. We will let you know.
Prioritize. I mean, I get it. If you're not running a freedom respecting and loving operating system, you can torture yourself. But eventually, get something good for us nerds out over here. I assume a Windows
the developer version on Linux, though.
You can still build it from GitHub, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very, very, very good. What is it? What language is it built in?
So
or languages.
Python and JavaScript mostly.
Okay.
So
enough. Easy.
The backend server is in Python, and the front end is JavaScript.
Easy. Okay. Solid.
React.
Yeah. So it's not like it's going to be crazy complicated build requirements. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
All right. Solid. Because this is something that really does tie into a lot of what we ended up talking about here on this show and all throughout the Linuxy open sourcey world. This is very fascinating. Yep. When you look out there and you look out to the world, you're going to like this question. What's your main competitor? Who do you feel nipping at your heels as you're worried that they're going to beat you to getting a significant market share with a completely different, say, technological platform? Who's coming at you?
So there's two ways to look at this. One is that there's the Facebook, Amazon, Google, which is the status quo.
Yeah. We've already agreed. They're the enemy. Yes. They're over here.
Yeah.
So clearly, you're not the only game in town that wants to do something that's different than that.
Yes.
When you look out there, what are you worried for whatever reason that they might take off over you?
I would say that there's not like one good competitor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies that are doing components of what we're doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of projects that I could point to.
Sure.
That are doing like decentralized storage, that are doing decentralized identity, that are doing decentralized domain name system, that are doing right. There's a good example. Like we're talking with the Tor Foundation, and we they're considering actually taking their .onion addresses and mapping them to human meaningful names.
Really?
Right? They're considering 3 different projects, and we're one of them.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
That is interesting.
So
Because yeah, right now, I mean, when I do my shows, I don't go through Tor, but I use Tor for all my personal machines.
Yeah. Well, you can use Tor, but not necessarily use Tor hidden services. I don't know what the usage of Tor hidden services is, but it doesn't seem to be high. I think it's mostly people who use Tor just use onion routing.
I think so too.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think hidden services is it's interesting, but the UX gap is massive.
Yeah.
Right? And so they need to close that UX gap. And one of the biggest components of that UX gap is how do you, these onion addresses, 9U whatever, that
they're
whole
delightful.
long thing.
Yeah. They're very easy to remember, I've found.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I just keep them in memory.
So no specific competitor that you feel like is point toable at this point. That is, I mean, that's kind of interesting all in and of itself. You're really eyeballing the big boys, and you're like, okay, we just need to get away from the big boy status quos out there.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Fascinating. What's the license for this stuff? What are you releasing under?
So the backend server Blockstack core is GPL v3.
Okay.
And the front end is the MPL.
Okay.
And then the rest of our libraries are MIT.
That's a nice collection. I dig it. Okay.
Yeah. So enough. You can use individual libraries. We wanted that to be MIT. We want people to be able to build their own, to build on top of that.
Exactly.
That's why we did that.
I totally get it. Makes sense to me. It makes sense to me.
But we wanted a copyleft license for the core software, core front and backend.
No, that's high fiveable. Well done on that.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Well, this is terribly fascinating. Where do you recommend people to go to get more information or to kick the tires?
I would go to blockstack.org and join the community. So join our mailing list. We have a Slack group with over 2,500 members. We have forums with about 500 people.
Someone does need to build a Slack-ish type thing on top of this.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, because
we will work with. If you want to build it, we will work with you. If you want to fork an existing open source project
and work make it, because I'm like something Slacky, a Twitter-ish thing, basically a Mastodon-ish thing, except where, except using the exact storage and ID system that you previously talked about. There's a lot of possibilities here.
Hey, look, if you know someone who wants to build a decentralized Twitter, we can get you funding for it.
Really?
We have very, very big investors who are interested in funding this.
Interesting.
So
because I've heard of many people that are looking into this. And I mean, realistically,
it's truly decentralized,
decentralized, where and here's how I almost envision it as we're talking. Yeah, is we have a .id. So I have a Lunduke.id or whatever it is, and that's where when you point to that, you end up pointing back to my storage supplier, which whether it's a Nextcloud instance, my server, whatever it is, and that's where all my posts and content are, and people are grabbing it from there. And then so when you're loading up your feed, you're basically going out and saying, ping the 38 some odd different IDs that you follow, bring them all into the feed and update every so often. And completely decentralized, so no server can take out your instance. Because even with Mastodon right now, it's federated. So if I'm on the main Mastodon social server, if that goes down, the network is fine, but my account's still toast. All the people following me aren't following me
exactly
anymore.
That doesn't help you,
right?
Yeah.
It's still a problem. It's better than it was. It's an improvement. It's a refined improvement on an existing paradigm, but it doesn't make it so I self-host. I've even thought maybe I should host my own Mastodon server with just me. But that's a huge amount of work to host my own server. It runs 8 different technology stacks just for one social network. It's ridiculous. So then that way no one can take me down. The only person that can take me down is me. And in this scenario, using Blockstack, we could build it that way. So the only person that could get rid of your data is you. Because you control your own data.
Yes.
I like that an awful lot. because I'm looking at it, and realistically, if there's a good chat client, a good instant messaging platform, a good social network, and whatnot, well, then that's enough reason to get people to start using it right there. And then everything else can just flow from that, aside from Wild West eBay.
And then eventually you get to the crazy stuff, the decentralized Uber, the decentralized eBay. You get to the decentralized, the decentralized
everything.
eBay, decentralized, everything.
It's great.
I mean,
and you basically end up having a point where the only point for anyone to have like a VPS server or anything like that is so that they can set up their one $5 a month VPS, this is my data store box.
Yes, exactly.
And then I just point everything to that, and then I that's my $5 a month box, and that's it.
And then you have healthcare services that are built on top of this, and you can actually host your own healthcare records, and you can grant access to health providers. There's a lot of stuff you can do.
This is fascinating. When you guys are ready for getting this out to the public this summer, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be very grumpy with you, because this is fascinating.
Absolutely.
This is one of those projects that I high fiveable all the way around. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me. Blockstack.org.com, both.
Blockstack.org.
Blockstack.org. Go check it out. And everyone, you know what? Everyone out there is interested in this. Go study up on it and tell me everything you think about this. I want to hear the good and the bad on this, because this is fascinating. And we'll keep in contact. This is great, man. Awesome.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian.
Go have a kick-ass day, dude.
Okay, you too.